Good afternoon, everyone. It's a wonderful afternoon here at JBDC, and I'm hoping wherever you are as well. Welcome to our first business dialogue for 2023. Those of you who have been with us before know that business dialogue is our product that we use to share salient happenings in our ecosystem, important things for our clients. And we have a variety of clients in a variety of sectors and industries, all MSMEs. This particular forum, we are talking today about a sector that is near and dear to my heart and certainly to the hearts of JBDC. Heart of JBDC as well, and that is the manufacturing sector. Many say that the manufacturing sector is the lifeblood of any economy. We are of that opinion as well. Certainly, manufacturing accounts for approximately a solid 8 to 9% of GDP, despite all of what's happening. That has been the case for the last 5-10 years. It's doing pretty well. And you have about 300 plus manufacturers in Jamaica doing a variety of goods in the traditional and the non-traditional areas. This afternoon, we're going to delve into it and talk a little bit about manufacturing, talk a little bit about the whole business of Jamaican and Jamaican-ness and Jamaican-made. Talk a little bit about that and the value of that to our economy, the value of that to our businesses, and the value of that when we go in the export market. What does that mean? Does that even have the value that it used to have, for instance? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the relevance and of manufacturing in the other areas, other linkage sectors, like the tourism sector, for instance. What is the value of a manufacturing sector, of a thriving manufacturing sector to our tourism product? We're going to talk about intellectual property and how that affects our manufacturers and how that affects our products that we produce in Jamaica. Does it? And can we leverage more? We're going to talk about how we stay on the export market with our manufactured goods right here in Jamaica. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about, for instance, a controversial, perhaps subtext of whether or not manufacturing here in Jamaica is as high value as we think it is, or we would like to believe. Or some persons believe that we should maintain the intellectual property of the particular design or particular good here in Jamaica and perhaps manufacture it elsewhere. That's a controversial topic that we will touch on this afternoon. We want to talk about all things manufacturing this afternoon, and we have an exciting panel which I'm going to introduce just in a very short while to you. But first, before we go into that and the meat of the conversation, I want to introduce our CEO, the affable, most times, unless you don't like it, she cussing you off. I'm just saying, our CEO, Ms. Valerie Vieira, to bring some opening remarks. Ms. V.
Right. Thank you so much, Harry. And you just spoke on my niche, right? So I want to say a big welcome to our participants, which I understand is quite a few today, and that this is a really in-the-moment discussion as we hear a lot of talk about expanding our presence in the market space, local and international, and really recognizing our niche, because we can't be all things to all men. How we recognize our niche and how we carve our space on those shelves. And I think it's very important for us to have that kind of discussion. And then our panelists are all hands-on in their subject areas. One thing about JBDC is that we're very practical, hands-on, so we're not into the lot of philosophical discussion. and so on. We're into hands-on real business, as they say. So, and our panelists, I know that they're all workers in the field. And so I'm very heartened that we have such an exciting lead speakers in our space today. And for me, the takeaway, our next steps has to be action, not just talk. And we say it's a nice forum and blah, blah, blah. It's about next steps, action. And I know the participants include some policymakers like our own ministry. I know we have participants from MIIC, and they are right in front to lead, to ensure that the ecosystem become nourishing so that we can really have our producers moving forward and taking their space in the marketplace. So for me, the discussion is beyond talk, it's into action. And I'm really looking forward to a very robust discussion from the presenters, the panelists, but also from our participants, because it's that kind of marriage and exchange that flowing out of that, we can really have an action sheet that follows on the discussions. So this is our first for this year. And you know, it's always moving forward, moving one step forward. And this one should not be any different. So I'm looking forward to listening, learning, and seeing even where JBDC, where we can intervene from our own space, but everybody have something they can put into the pot of soup. And at the end, we have an action program to move forward. So welcome everybody, and let us just relax and see how we can share with each other from our own experience and our own knowledge as we look forward to a really exciting discussion and outcome, which is action at the end of the day. So Harry, you in charge of the ship?
Thank you, Ms. V. So when you say action, not a bag of mouth.
No, allergic to that.
Right. That was who sang again, Carolyn. And I'm sure I don't quite know who am I?
Nadine Sutherland.
Nadine Sutherland. I know I could depend on my main address guest this afternoon to remind us on who that is. But telling us who sings what song is not her only expertise, and I need to tell you that. She is, in fact, the director for the Tourism Linkages Network at the Ministry of Tourism. And very importantly, the Tourism Linkages Network has been doing some fabulous work. We are a critical part of the Tourism Linkages Network. For instance, the Christmas in July product is just one of the products that the Tourism Linkages Network deliver on an annual basis, and several other major products that the Tourism Linkages Network does. I mentioned in the opening the connection between our manufacturing sector and the other sectors, the linkages sectors, including tourism. And I know that there was a needs assessment that was done. I don't remember the sector study, I don't remember the exact terms, Carolyn, that was done a couple of years ago. And I'm sure Carolyn will make reference to that. But I'm going to invite Carolyn to us about how it is we can improve innovation in our manufacturing sector to meet tourism demand. Critical. So welcome, Mrs. Carolyn McDonald Riley, friend of JBDC and director of Tourism Linkages Network. Carolyn.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Deputy CEO, Mr. Harold Davis, who is a strong partner with the linkages. And I must, of course, acknowledge our CEO, Ms. Val Rivera, and other esteemed members of this panel. And I'd also love to greet the audience. I'm pleased to accept this invitation to share this special event with you, but I must confess a little hesitancy because, of course, my minister, who you all know, unmatched Minister of Tourism, speaks in a few days at the closing of the budget debate. We now move into the stage of the sectoral presentation, and you understand how it is when you're saying things that the minister wants to say in a couple of days from now. But having put me on the stand and stipulating that as a precursor to the panel discussion, my address is going to specifically center on improving local innovation to meet tourism demand. And it was a tourism demand study, of course, that our Deputy CEO just was speaking about. Let me first recognize that as a government agency charged with the sustainable development of MSMEs in Jamaica, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation has, since its inception, worked with, lobbied for, and fostered the growth and development of micro and small manufacturers, producers in Jamaica. It is not difficult to realize that over the past decade or so, the country has seen a marked growth in MSMEs, while the cries to be rescued continue to echo, even though there's increasing support forthcoming from both government agencies and private institutions such as the banking sector. Of course, with the realization that the real pillars of the economy are the small entrepreneurs. This is in fact borne out in your own statement that through your many initiatives, several hundreds of entrepreneurs have benefited from enhanced production capacity, access to financing, as well as shelf space in the local market through the Things Jamaica market brand. Unfortunately, we'll be talking about the disruptive force of the coronavirus, which of course for a long time, and your recognition that while output from the manufacturing sector has remained steady over the years, the recent COVID-19 period proved challenging, with a marked reduction in the sector's growth, dropping by 5.4%. This, of course, must be of concern because of the setback of this portents. The many challenges experienced by the sector cannot be attributed only to COVID, however, as whether or not you agree or disagree with one side or another, the Russia-Ukraine war, which has been raging for over a year now, has played a role in setting back economies across the globe. Coupled with that, the ping-pong effect of major economic fallouts, and you may understand, if not appreciate, why many of the challenges or losses or access to both local and international markets, really access to financing and the increasing cost of raw material. I will leave your marketers and economists to enlighten you further on the downside of these pitfalls and take you directly into the area that I can elaborate on a little, since it impacts on the industry for which I have the real passion and some responsibility, and hope that you will see the benefit of sharing the passion. At the Ministry of Tourism, we are resolute in our desire not just to build Jamaica as one of the best tourism destinations in the world, but led by our untiring minister, we are relentlessly pursuing a course of development that allows what we call SMTEs. That is our small, medium tourism enterprises to prosper. Minister Bartlett has been driving the fact that while we relentlessly go after the foreign direct investments and the most prestigious hotel brands that will attract the global tourism market to our shores, we want an industry in which the commanding heights of the products and services needed to fuel the hotels functioning at the highest level of professionalism and efficiency, that this should be provided by our Jamaican craftsmen and women, our artisans, our farmers, our manufacturers. We believe that we can do it. I can share with you that it was only last week, while in meetings with the developers of 2 major hotels in Western Jamaica, Minister Bartlett stressed that he was desirous of them looking to Jamaica first for their products and supplies, and to ensure that their guests will be seen made in Jamaica on their products and not made in the USA or China. And as a matter of fact, as we get more engrossed in these meetings and we move down to that side of the island, we definitely, as per usual, will be taking the JBDC with us. But members of the SMTEs have a very important role to play. If they do not meet up to the international standard required, they cannot expect to be at the beginning of the line. Substandards will not work. Quality must be on par or better than the competition. Quantities must be consistent and deliveries must be on time. I can also share with you at the ministry that we go beyond talk and setting policies. One of the agencies of the ministry is the Tourism Enhancement Fund, which resides the Tourism Linkages Network, which I have the privilege of directing. What are the functions of TLN, you may ask? The short explanation is that it seeks to create and foster linkages between tourism and a number of sectors considered vital to our goal of Jamaicanizing the industry. So we have networks in manufacturing and agriculture, gastronomy, health, entertainment, and sports and knowledge. Time does not allow for me to expand on all of them, but I can share with you that each linkages, which we call the network, has been achieving success, particularly in agriculture and manufacturing. Gastronomy and hospitality sector, which really now we spend more time on purchasing more things Jamaican, and from our farmers selling much more produce to the hotel sector, hassle-free by utilizing an online portal created specifically for this purpose. You may have heard of Alex, the online platform created by the Ministry of Tourism to facilitate seamless transaction between members of the farming sector and the hospitality sector. Alex has been very effective in getting more Jamaican produce into the hotels, whereas in times past, we were largely offering American European dishes with very limited Jamaican option. You will now find that even some of our very prominent hotels offering Jamaica menu with limited international options. Let me also tell you about the speed networking event, which had its 8th stage in just a couple of weeks ago, and for which the JBDC is a reliable partner. The primary objective of speed networking is to strengthen linkages and increase businesses between local suppliers of goods and services from other sectors, with a special eye on giving the SMTEs ready access to the growing tourism market. It has become a highly anticipated calendar event with other committed partners, including the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and other entities, including the JAMPRO and RADA. And while I spoke about the speed networking, which really looks at the SMTE business, one of our flagship programs is Christmas in July. A number of you might be familiar with it, but this is really where JBDC does the hand-holding and a major share of the work, in which we display there are repeat manufacturers, but especially new. We try to focus on new people who have creative products to offer, and JBDC does a wonderful job in terms of assisting us, in terms of looking at the product, assessing the product in terms of consistency, durability, and whether it is a product that will stand the test of time on the market. And where it is that they fall short, JBDC is an incubator that provides that home to bring that person up to a particular standard, to bring that persons or company. So whether you're an individual, whether you're a company, whether you're very small, micro, or medium, JBDC does the hand-holding. And your challenge might be your labels. It might be the kind of product, it might be the weight of the product, and we have had some really great successful stories. What does happen is that we have those persons available for a whole day, and we invite corporate Jamaica, the tourism sector, and other gift shops to come in, look at what it is we have to offer, with the idea of making those orders. All of these persons are stored also in a data bank, and we also take these persons to different opportunities with us. So there are these opportunities that JBDC continues to do. And of course, those persons who would not have been able to make the on production day or on show day, JBDC continues to work with those persons to bring them up to a particular stage so that perhaps for the next staging, we have another ready bank of persons. So kudos to JBDC to continue doing this year after year after year, a very strong partner. In closing, I do understand that in this climate of international trade and the availability of many products from cheaper sources, that there is a dilemma, but we have to focus on what is best for us as Jamaicans and the national economy. And so this forum under the theme, Authentic Jamaican, the Manufacturing Dilemma, it is timely, and I'm sure out of it, we will emerge useful ideas, pointing to ways and means of overcoming some of the challenges that the target audience faces. Thank you very much for having me. Over to you, Deputy CEO, Mr. Harold Davis.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Really appreciate the time that you spent this with us this afternoon sharing. But you know, so you're always here. You're always with us all the while. So we benefit from your experience, your partnership, and mostly your really just your willingness to share and to be a part of this great ecosystem to move us forward as a country. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for your words. And listen, she said one critical thing, and we are firm believers in that. And I'm paraphrasing now, and we're not into affirmative action. You have to come to the table with quality products. You have to come to the table with quality businesses and sustainable business model that allows you to be sustainable in your offering to the marketplace. That's part of it. That's part of the story. So thank you so much, Carolyn. I know you have to run, but if you can stay with us for a little bit, that would be great as well. We're going to move into our panel discussion. And I mentioned earlier that we have some really exciting panelists this afternoon. Ms. Lee mentioned that they are hands-on folk, and yes, they are. And there are people who have depth and wealth of experience in what it is that we're talking about this afternoon. Authentic Jamaican, the manufacturing dilemma. What is authentic Jamaican? Is there such a thing as authentic Jamaican? What makes a product and offering authentically Jamaican? These are some questions that we're going to answer. And they are, we know that brand Jamaica, arguably, pound for pound, is the strongest brand internationally. Certainly, if you think of our size as Jamaican and the fact that we are punching way above our weight class, one can argue that the Jamaican brand is perhaps the strongest brand. I believe is the strongest brand per capita in the world. Any other country with 3 million people have such a strong brand that any corner of the earth knows a Jamaican story and figure that they know a Jamaican, you let me know. But that's fine. until such time, I will say the strongest brand pound for pound per capita internationally. We know that, but there are challenges in leveraging that strong Jamaican brand. And we're going to talk about that. We have 4 top panelists this afternoon. We have Mr. Richard Coe, and he is the Vice President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. We have Mrs. Janine Fletcher-Taylor, who is our manager right here at JBDC. She's a manager for marketing services or marketing services. You heard Carolyn refer to Things Jamaican, and as we spoke about Things Jamaican as well. Things Jamaican, the product Things Jamaican falls in Janine's shop. We have Miss Adrene Thompson, and she's a manager for trademarks, design, and geographical indications at Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, JIPO. And we have Miss Marlene Porter, and she's manager sales and promotion at JAMPRO. I want to start with Richard. Richard, I want you to talk. I know you have a wealth of experience in manufacturing yourself. I know it's your baby, apart from being the vice president of JMEA. But talk to me from your perspective about the dilemma that we have as manufacturers in Jamaica and Jamaica. And in particular, I want to start at the beginning of the supply chain, which is the raw material. Is there a crisis of inputs? Is there an issue as it relates to sustaining our quality criteria as manufacturers because of a raw material dilemma? Talk to me from that perspective, and of course you can speak from your general perspective as a seasoned manufacturer yourself, as some of the hiccups for the manufacturing sector. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I have a presentation. I'm not sure if I will have an opportunity to actually give that presentation, and I explain what I believe to be an issue. I wouldn't be so, I wouldn't call it a crisis. It's not that bad, but we do have challenges. But the challenges are not unique to us. There are some challenges that are unique to Jamaica, but generally manufacturers all over the world are having an issue with the supply of raw materials. Some organizations, some countries do it better because of where they're based. If you're in a first world country, you have larger businesses, you have stronger purchasing power, so it is easier for certain countries and manufacturers to be able to source the materials as they need. But Jamaica, because of the size of our economy, because of the size of our businesses, we don't have the purchasing power that larger nations have. So the problem is a little bit more difficult for us, but there are things that we can do to mitigate some of the issues that we face, which I would speak about later on in the conversation today.
Okay, great stuff. I mean, are there other areas of your presentation that you wanted to probably share with us?
Well, I wanted to go through the presentation because I think everything that I want to talk about is important. So if it is that you want me to present, then I'm happy to do so now.
Yeah, man. Okay. Yeah, man. I would love for you to do that right now.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Is it coming up as full screen or not yet?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, let me put that on then. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is the sourcing of raw materials and the crisis of inputs. There are several challenges that we face, and as I said, it's not unique to us in many cases, and in others it is. So Jamaica has its issues in sourcing raw materials, and there is a focus on the supply chain issues in Jamaica, including the raw material supply issues from suppliers around the world, and the solutions to mitigate these challenges. That's what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, do you guys recall images like this during COVID? I'm sure you do. For those who frequently went to the supermarket, it's an all too familiar image, and it was a result of the disruption in the supply of raw materials. Raw material sourcing is a critical factor in the manufacturing industry, and it has become more challenging due to several reasons. The following are some of the common challenges faced by manufacturers in sourcing raw materials. So the first is increasing global competition and demand, instability and unpredictability in the supply chain, limited availability of some raw materials, price volatility of raw materials, and finally, quality issues in raw materials. So raw material sourcing is a critical factor. But there are also specific supply issues for Jamaica. And Jamaica faces several unique supply chain challenges that can affect the sourcing of raw materials for manufacturers. These include limited transportation infrastructure, high logistical costs, customs and regulatory barriers, limited availability of raw materials, and finally, limited local supplier base. But also raw material supply issues in Jamaica from suppliers around the world. There are other areas that we need to have a look at. Those are political instability in supplier countries, unpredictable weather conditions affecting crop yields, limited availability due to increased global demand, and increased transportation costs due to the supply chain disruptions. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about each of these. This is a picture of a wheat field in Ukraine. So we all know that there's been political instability in Ukraine due to the war with Russia. And just as we saw the back end of COVID-19, this war began. Before the war, 46% of Ukraine's exports was in agricultural products, specifically grains, and 42% were in semi-manufactured products. Russia, on the other hand, produces 25% of the world's nitrogen fertilizer. Cumulatively, Ukraine and Russia account for 28% of the world wheat exports. The supply of these goods came to a grinding halt as the war exploded, and the effects of this started to ripple across the globe. This is a picture of a corn field in the Midwest, USA. But in other places, we have seen extreme temperatures, droughts, wildfires, hurricanes, and tornadoes. Indeed, these are largely and increasingly the effects of global warming, which can ultimately lead to shortages and price increases for Jamaican manufacturers and ultimately the consumer. It's unlikely that anyone in their right mind likes to wait in a long line. Over the past few years, Jamaica has been doing just that. For COVID vaccinations, certain food and non-food inputs. Because of our size and the lack of wealth and political weight, we have been waiting near to the back of the line for goods from suppliers around the world. And to get near to the front, we have had to pay more than normal to get what we need. Limited availability of certain raw materials due to increased global demand ultimately leads to shortages and price increases. This has made it difficult for our manufacturers to secure necessary inputs for production. This is a picture of a stranded super container in the Suez Canal. And the result of that, that super container running aground led to supply chain disruptions for several days and weeks all around the world. But what are the solutions? What can we do about some of the issues that we currently face? So some of them are developing local supplier relationships, diversifying supplies and raw materials, investing in supply chain technology, forecasting and planning for supply chain disruptions. So I'll touch on these briefly. So developing local supplier relationships can help manufacturers in Jamaica to secure reliable and consistent supplies of raw materials. This can also provide manufacturers with the opportunity to negotiate better prices. Purchasing partnerships with fellow manufacturers can also improve buying power and facilitate lower purchase prices from suppliers. There are several Indian and Chinese businesses who use this method right here in Jamaica to purchase with great success. Yet, many other Jamaican businesses prefer to keep their businesses close to their chests and prefer not to work with a competitor. We have all heard of the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's the first principle of investing, and it should be no different in our supply chain. Diversifying suppliers and raw materials can help Jamaican manufacturers to mitigate the risk of supply chain disruptions. By sourcing from multiple suppliers and using alternative materials to manufacture, manufacturers can reduce their reliance on a single source of raw materials. Investing in supply chain technology, such as real-time monitoring, inventory management, and tracking systems, can help our manufacturers to identify and address supply chain issues before they become major problems. It's not uncommon for businesses to plan a budget for the upcoming year. Proper budgeting involves anticipating how much sales you expect to do, but also, and equally important, is understanding how much materials you will need. Crucial to this planning is to discuss how much sales your customers will do with you. That's forecasting. Failure to do this may result in you being under or oversupplied with inventory for production. Also, forecasting and planning for supply chain disruptions can help us to be prepared for unexpected events. By having contingency plans in place, manufacturers can minimize the impact of supply chain disruptions on their operations. Okay, so in conclusion, the challenges faced by manufacturers in sourcing raw materials in Jamaica are in some cases unique and in others not so much. But there are solutions available to help mitigate these challenges. By developing local supplier relationships, improving transportation, infrastructure, streamlining customs and regulatory processes, and exploring alternative materials, manufacturers in Jamaica can overcome these challenges and remain competitive in the global marketplace. And I just also wanted to highlight this stamp that, or the sticker that my business has recently created. We haven't seen much push on the Buy Jamaica campaign, and a recent experience reminded us that we needed to remind our customers that they should be considering Jamaican products first. So we came up with this sticker, and we've been in dialogue with the JMEA and JAMPRO to start to resurrect the Buy Jamaican campaign. We've already printed these stickers and we're putting them all over our products so customers can know that we are Jamaican made. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. I love it, by the way. I love it. I am Jamaican, choose me. I love it. I love it. There was a campaign apart from the Buy Jamaican campaign. There was a product developed by the Bureau of Standards called Jamaica Made, and it was an authentication stamp as well, which I haven't seen much push either for it, which was a product which was supposed to be a stamp for authentication, one, and also a stamp that says something else, a stamp that says that this product has been approved and sanctioned by the Bureau of Standards in Jamaica, so you can be assured of its quality internationally, type of thing. But I'm not seeing, and more importantly, it was called Jamaica Made, but I'm not seeing a push for it, and I need to talk to Dr. Gooden and company about that, because that too is very important. But thank you so much, Richard, for that comprehensive presentation. Couple of critical things stood out in the presentation. For us, the whole business of the clustering approach, I mentioned the Chinese and the Indians and them doing it, and why not? And why not us, using this as a linchpin of how it is that we operate? Why shouldn't we? I don't know. I mean, we need to talk about that and why it is that that isn't the case. But it makes life so much easier, not only for consolidation in terms of the supply chain, raw material issues and that type of thing, but also for consolidation going into a marketplace or even for financing, So we need, so lots of big takeaways from it. And I'm sure in the discussion period, we're going to have lots of discussions about it. Thanks so much, Richard, for that presentation. So we're going to move into our second panelist this evening. And remember, I alluded to a dilemma earlier about this whole business about Jamaican and Jamaicans made, and some people suggesting that really we should really just own the intellectual property for the particular product and perhaps source the manufacturing elsewhere. Does that make it a Jamaican product, for instance? I remember I was in a forum many, many years ago, and my good friend Jimmy Masanaman, God rest his soul, was presenting, and he was presenting on Grace's strategy. This is many, many years ago. It's probably almost close to 20 years ago. And he said in the forum, I never forget it, he says, Grace doesn't sell a product. He says, Grace sells a brand. So we do everything that we need to do to promote and protect that brand. But that's what we sell, more than anything else. When you go on a shelf, you're not buying a product, you're not buying a corned beef, you're not buying a mackerel, you're buying a Grace corned beef and a Grace mackerel, So that stuck with me. So that is a dilemma, isn't it, Jenny, our next presenter? How do you differentiate between what is Jamaican and what is Jamaican made? And for that discussion, I'm going to invite our Manager for Marketing Services at JBDC, Mrs. Janine Fletcher-Taylor, to weigh in on that. Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. So the discussion about what is Jamaican has two sides to it. There is the side of the locals and what we perceive or understand from our culture and our history and so on, what we know to be Jamaican, and there are many characteristics of that. But more importantly, as we talk about industry, what we really want to understand is what the market perceives as Jamaican or what it understands to be Jamaican. Some of it is saleable, while some of it is just emotional in that regard, right? So globally, what we are known for, what we have identified as some key markers for brand identity is, of course, firstly, reggae, and by extension of that, dancehall. And with that comes a whole culture of music and all the associated merchandise that goes with that. There is beverage, there is fashion, and there are a whole host of other merchandise items that leverage or can leverage on what is known as reggae. Then we have sports. And of course, we have the Usain Bolts and so on. And we have a long legacy of athletic genius in our DNA. And so that would have been another feature that has made Brand Jamaica famous in the world. There is also our coffee, Blue Mountain Coffee. And basically, even if the coffee is not coming from Blue Mountain at this stage, it would just be like Pampers, where, all other brands are summed under this word Pampers. So for Jamaica, coffee, and once it is saying coffee from Jamaica, the assumption sometimes is that it's Blue Mountain Coffee, and we always have to make those distinctions in our branding. Then to a lesser extent, we also have rum with some heavy competition. And then we move into our yardie culture, which in some instances, surprisingly, even though it has a negative history, it still generates some amount of fascination in the marketplace. You know, there is the attitude of the, you know, the yardie attitude. And what does that mean when persons try to speak like us, dress like us, and dance like us? These are things that we take for granted in terms of what the branding means to the world. So we really have to understand how the world perceives it, how the market perceives it, and why they buy into it. What's the psychology behind it? Then we move into what is coming up to be a very interesting trend, which is our cuisine. Anybody who is involved in social media knows about the famous Jamaican oxtail. And what does that mean for things like seasonings and sauces, or innovating in the condiments arena, in the specialty foods arena? What does that mean for us? We had patties before that. And so our cuisine is becoming more and more famous. We have seen a number of features on some major network shows, not just on the cuisine, but chefs of Jamaica. So this is also something that we have to pay attention to, where the brand is concerned and what the market sees as that Jamaican element. Within the brand, there is also an emotional appeal to the global market. We are known for the Country for Love with the Bob Marley, One Love. We are known for happiness. Happiness is one of the key markers for brand Jamaica. There's also the notion of relaxed vibes, easygoing. And so sometimes even when we have our visitors coming into our Things Jamaican store and we dress all corporate, they're a bit taken aback because they are expecting relaxed, easygoing, and so on. There's also the unique style of customer service, which speaks to, again, the attitudes and the persona of Jamaicans themselves. And so what we have is a situation where persons are falling in love with the idea of what it means to be a Jamaican, and are even going as far as imitating some of those qualities, right? There is also the matter of color. And I remember years ago having a very strong debate with a colleague of mine that said the black, green, and gold is cliche. Well, I can tell you the black, green, and gold sells. And when you add the red to it, there's that Rastafarian element that sells it as well. Those are some critical features that persons look for when they say that is Jamaican. Even if they don't hear you speaking, they're going to be looking at the hairstyles, they're going to be looking at the colors, they're going to be looking at that attitude, and they're going to be identifying that as must be a Jamaican. And these are not things that we should take for granted, because if we were to look at brand Jamaica within the conversation of branding and branding strategies, we would have achieved significant brand awareness through these features. What I think we need to do is to find a way to convert this brand awareness into key products that are using these features and use that as some way of leveraging competition. Now, with brand awareness, we also know that the market either really loves Jamaica or really does not like us so much. They think we show off, and there's always this negative thing. Recently, we had a big uproar on social media between us and Haiti and so on. And one of the big takeaways of that argument was that other Caribbean islands were pretty peeved that they were being collapsed as one country called Jamaica. And so, yes, there is that side to it that the social media took it to, but then we must ask ourselves, what does that mean for brand Jamaica and goods marked as brand Jamaica? Mm-hmm. One of the things that we have also seen is that a number of persons globally have exploited this brand. Not necessarily, I'm not sure what the intellectual property considerations would have been, but we have seen coffee stores being open and called Jamaica. We have seen quite a number of other types of businesses using the Jamaican name without necessarily being Jamaican in the strictest of sense. So when we move into what it means to be authentically Jamaican, there are three major points that we need to pay attention to. Mr. Davis alluded to the NCBJ mark of Authentic Jamaica, which requires 50% of inputs to be locally made or locally grown. There's also the craft policy, Jamaica National Craft Policy, which goes into quite a bit of detail as to what can be classified as authentic Jamaican. And the three main points is inputs from raw materials being locally made to a certain degree, as much as 70%. However, if the input is not locally made, there must be some significant value added or change done to the raw material to convert it to an output to classify it as authentic Jamaican made. And it must be either made by a Jamaican citizen or a registered Jamaican business. Those are some of the key elements that distinguish authentic Jamaican made. And I know that from time to time, we have products that in reality, majority of the inputs are not available locally. So for example, we have authorship, which are books and printed materials. In most instances, it's not quite feasible to print those items locally, but certainly the authorship is more than 70% of the value added in terms of what that product represents. So there are some products that are specific and unique in their definitions of what is an input and what is the output. A book, the majority of the input is the authorship. There are some other types of products. For example, I know that we've had debates about t-shirts and t-shirts coming in and being ripped and adding beads to it and tie-dyeing it and so on. To what extent would we ascribe those actions to being local value added? So when it gets into the nitty-gritty, there are some products that are borderline controversial, but then we have to be careful to ensure that there are just certain inputs that are not made here, right? And so given that, what should we do? We have had conversations in the fashion industry, for example, where the fashion designers would have created a fashion item. They would have done the patterns and have everything in terms of the design done here, but would have sent that design to manufacturers in India or other manufacturing houses that are far more capable of churning out the volumes that Mr. Poe spoke about earlier. What's the practicality of that, and how would we have measured the value input in terms of the design versus the actual manufacturing of the garment? So there are some particular issues that we really have to look at when we're talking about authentic Jamaican. There are some things that are product specific, and essentially we need to move from brand awareness to brand validation and really being able to quantify exactly what it means to add that brand Jamaica to our product and how is that influencing the purchase decision of the market, right? So those are just some of the things that we can use to distinguish Jamaican and made in Jamaica.
All right. Thank you very much, Janine. You know, and perhaps it's a wonderful segue into our friend from Jaipur, because you spoke a lot about brand and the brand Jamaica and brand awareness and brand validation. And there's also brand valuation as well, apart from brand validation. That's very important. And I know the whole business of how it is that we first of all manage our intellectual property. First of all, know what they are, know where they are, manage it, and then see how it is that we can leverage our intellectual property in our business model. Is very important for our businesses, our small businesses, our manufacturers, very important. So I'm going to invite Miss Adrien Thompson. She is the manager for trademarks design and geographical indications at the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, to talk to us about how it is that we protect this fantastic thing called Brand Jamaica, and perhaps some of the opportunities that we are not looking at and exploiting as manufacturers. And perhaps Adrien, and I have a very good friend who is Adrien, and perhaps Adrien, to just inform our audience a little bit about what geographical indication is. Janine mentioned it, I mentioned it earlier. Persons tend to know what trademarks are, generally speaking, and maybe not so much the industrial design and copyright. Trademarks is what persons know, but perhaps you can share with us a little bit about that. But also, I want to hear your perspective about how it is that we protect this brand Jamaica from an intellectual property management perspective. Mrs. Thompson, Ms. Thompson.
Okay, hi, Mr. Davis. Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me this evening. And greetings to Ms. Vieira and the other esteemed panelists, and to our audience. Thank you for giving us your time. And so I have a very brief presentation just to introduce the concept of intellectual property, and we'll talk about what it is and some things for or manufacturers to think about when they're thinking about creating their brand under the umbrella of Brand Jamaica, and just some considerations to, you know, really think about when they're formulating how they're going to create their own individual branding. So let me just share that presentation. And tell me if you're seeing it.
Yes, we're seeing it. Put it in slide mode and we're good to go.
Okay, 1 second. Need to change the view.
The icon at the bottom, Adrien.
Yeah, I always forget to.
Oh, yeah, there you go, that one.
Okay, great.
There you go.
Okay, so protecting IP rights. So just let me do the brief JIPO branding, what JIPO is about, because a lot of people complain that they don't hear about JIPO enough. So JIPO is the the agency under the Ministry of Industry, Investments and Commerce, with responsibility for administering IP laws in Jamaica. And in addition to doing a lot of public education work, what we also do is deal with the registration of various intellectual property rights that we're going to talk about briefly, including trademarks, designs, patents, and geographical indications. And we also have a voluntary copyright registry. So what is intellectual property and what are intellectual property rights? The intellectual property refers to a creation of the mind. So it's more than an idea, it's the step after that. It's you converting your idea in some kind of tangible form. And basically an IP right is a legal right that is used to protect this intellectual activity. And it can be in any field. So scientific, artistic, any industrial field, it doesn't matter. We encounter intellectual property in all aspects of our day-to-day life. And the power of IP rights is that they're a tool that can be used by businesses to enable them to earn recognition or financial benefits from what they invent or create. And so it's a very powerful tool for MSME. Okay, so in terms of types of intellectual property rights, so before I go into patents that are on the screen, there's copyright. And so copyright typically is used to protect your artistic, musical, literary works. And so when you think of authorship and the creator coming up with some kind of, artistic work, usually, that usually falls under the realm of copyright and related rights. Other things like broadcasting, TV shows, film, that falls under the realm of copyright. And then you have, on the other side, patents. So patents tend to refer to IP to protect inventions or something that is functional. So a patent is a monopoly. It's an exclusive right granted for an invention that is a product or process that provides a new way of doing something or offers a new technical solution to a problem. So basically, a patent grants the inventor a monopoly to exploit their patent for coming up with a solution that nobody else came up with before. So whether it's you come up with the cure for cancer or you design some new type of phone network or some kind of medical device, you can use a patent to protect that intellectual property. Okay, so whereas a patent deals with the functional or technical aspects of an article, industrial design, or design for short, is used to protect the article's aesthetics. So what does the thing look like? What draws your eye to it? What makes the article appealing? Usually that falls under the realm of design. And so it can be the shape of the article, it can be a pattern on the article, a unique color combination, or some kind of imagery that's attached to the article. But basically an industrial design is used to allow the MSME to present their good or service to the consumer and to distinguish their good or service using various aspects of the design. So a common example would be perfume in the perfume industry. So the shape of perfume bottles, so very unique. Also the Coca-Cola bottle, the shape of that bottle, it's another famous example of an industrial design. So, just how you present the item to the consumer can also be protected. And then there's trademarks that people usually think of when they think of branding. And so when you hear trademarks, you're thinking of your logo. And so the definition of a trademark is it's a sign that is used to distinguish the goods or services from one enterprise from the goods or services of those of another enterprise. And so it's essential that your trademark is distinctive because in many ways, the trademark is the face of your business. It is what consumers are going to encounter first when they're interacting with your goods or services. And over time, it becomes associated with a particular level of quality. So, people will be very loyal to a particular brand based on the strength of the quality of goods associated with that trademark. So we mentioned it before, Grace, that's an example of a very well-known local mark. So, you'll have people who will only buy Grace products, not necessarily because, Lasco or Kendall beans are not good, but because of their brand loyalty over time. This is what their parents used. or they bought these things one time, these beans, and they were really good. And then everything under the Grace umbrella, they associate with a particular level of quality. So a trademark can be very powerful for any business. And so some things to think about when you're considering what your trademark is going to be is how to make your trademark as distinctive as possible. Because remember, you want to be able to distinguish your business from, your competitors. And so the trademark in and of itself has to be distinctive. The more unique your trademark is, easier it is for it to leave an impression on the consumer and for them to have a mental image of your business as opposed to somebody else's when they think about this product. And so you want something that stands out. And so what a lot of companies do is that they'll use a made up word or concept or image for their trademark. So, years ago, the term Google meant absolutely nothing. However, now when you think about Google, you're automatically thinking about the search engine. Or Yahoo, that doesn't mean anything, it's totally made up. Kodak is another example of a completely made up word. However, over time, it's very distinctive in the mind of the consumer. Or it can be something that is a fairly common word, but it's used in a different non-descriptive context. And so a famous example of that would be Apple. And so the image of an apple or the word apple in association with computer products, that is now one of the most famous trademarks in the world. But if they were using the term apple just to sell fruits, then that would be descriptive and not very distinctive. So as a MSME, when you're thinking about your branding, you want to think about how you can use something that makes your business pop. It's also important that your trademark doesn't consist of a generic term for the type of product or service that you're selling. And so if you are going to be selling jerk sauce, then it wouldn't be very prudent for your trademark to simply be jerk sauce or, Jamaica jerk sauce. Because again, that doesn't really tell me which enterprise within Jamaica this jerk sauce comes from. It just tells me what's in the bottle. And so if you want to use a descriptive element, you might want to combine it with something else. So be it some kind of logo or, again, it could be a made up term or, pepperwood jerk sauce. So you're using it with another distinctive mark in association so that as a whole, the overall sign becomes more distinctive. So those are some things to think about when you're coming up with your brand. Another thing to think about is if you're planning to use the national symbols and emblems in your trademarks, then it's important for you to get permission. So a lot of people want to use the flag or the hummingbird in their branding. And so because the use of these emblems, they're protected under the Trademarks Act. And so you'll need to show the office, if you're trying to register your trademark at JIPO, that you have permission from the Office of the Prime Minister to use these national emblems and symbols. And so basically you're just going to write to the protocol office within the Office of the Prime Minister, and you submit, a letter with a picture of what you intend your logo to be, and you're just going to be asking them permission to use it in your trademark, and they'll, say yes or no, but you'll need that proof of authorization before you can register your trademark here at JIPO. And then if you're planning to use the country name, so we're talking about brand Jamaica, lots of people will want to, you know, use some connection to Jamaica in their individual marks, but be aware that if you're planning to register the trademark locally here at JIPO and you're going to use the name Jamaica in it, the trademark shouldn't be misleading. So you'll need to show that the goods or services originate from Jamaica or have some connection to Jamaica. So we're talking about linkages with Jamaica earlier in order for you to use the authentic Jamaican brand. So the standard isn't that stringent, but you might be asked, depending on what the goods or services are, whether or not there is some actual connection to Jamaica. And just so you know, JIPO is also seeking on the international stage to get country name protection. So to have Jamaica and other country names protected internationally is something that we're working on at the international stage. And then finally, I was asked to define what a geographical indication is. And so whereas a trademark is a sign that identifies a business, what a geographical indication does, it's a sign that says these goods or services, no, these goods, not services usually. These goods have a specific quality that is attributable to where the good comes from. And so this coffee is unique. It has a very distinctive flavor profile because it comes from the Blue Mountains. So Blue Mountain coffee would be an example of a geographical indication. So it's usually agricultural related products, but it doesn't have to be. It can also be craft products. So, you know, for example, Swiss watches can be a GI, but most commonly it's used in the context of food and agricultural products. So lots of alcoholic beverages, the Chianti wine, tequila from Mexico. You have champagne from France, Darjeeling tea, lots of cheeses are GIs. So basically, the thing to remember is that a GI has a link to the area that the goods come from. That's what makes GIs unique. And so, yeah, those are just some intellectual property rights that you can consider when you are crafting your IP portfolio. And so you might want to think about what goods or services you offer, and it is possible that there will be overlap. And so depending on what the business is, it might have room for not only having a trademark, but having other aspects of IP to protect the value of the business. And so again, don't forget that patents, designs, and GIs are other IP rights that are available to you. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Adrienne, for that information. And listen, we can't stress enough the importance of businesses understanding intellectual property rights, intellectual property management as well. You know, it's very, very important. It's very, very important, especially in this age of digital trade, online trade. It becomes even more important for you to understand how to protect, first of all, how to register, first of all, the intellectual property, whatever it is, whether it is the patent, the copyright, the trademark, the industrial design, or whatever, or the GI. Well, we don't have no GI. Well, we have GI, but I mean, and that's not for you to protect in particular. But it's so important for you to understand, first of all, and to register your intellectual property with JICO. If you're thinking of trading globally, which you ought to be thinking of trading globally, it's very important for you to be registering your intellectual property in the territories. And of course, Madrid Protocol and other protocol like that will enable ease of registering trademarks internationally, for instance. So it's very important for us to get that and to understand that as we move into this era of global trade, global business, digitalized trade, digital trade is very, very important for us to understand it. Very, very important. And also this issue, I mentioned it before, and I know Adrian didn't have time to go into it, of the IP valuation as well, because it's coming to a point where you will be able to use, and you are already able to use it internationally, other places. Your IP on your balance sheets itself, and helping you to for you to first of all understand the value of your IP and use it as things like collateral, use it to enhance your balance sheet and things of that nature. That's very, very important as well. But that's for another forum where we can delve into that some more and have persons understand how to get that done. All right, so I'm going to talk about export and it's a beautiful segue as well. Yeah, you know, we have been doing some wonderful segues this afternoon. And this is the last segue that we're going to do as it relates to our panelists, is to talk about how does Jamaican made do in the export market. Other speakers, other panelists alluded to it before, the value of a Jamaican made product and a Jamaican made manufactured product in the international space. What do people conjure when they see a Jamaican made product on their shelf internationally? Is there space on the international shelf for the market? What has been our history? What has been our story in the export market? So to give our temperature check, we have a very good friend personally and of JBDC for many, many years, Miss Marlene Porter. She is the manager for sales and promotions at JAMPRO. Talk to us, Marlene, about Jamaican made in the export market. What do our manufacturers have to look forward to? What do they have to consider in going into the export market? Where are we as Jamaican made products in the export market?
Thank you, Chairman Harold Davis, CEO Valerie Vera, fellow panelists and participants. Harold, I want to affirm something you said earlier on about confidence in the fact that our made in Jamaica is probably the strongest. I believe it is one of the strongest and well-known brands globally. And this is important even as we talk about the export markets, the opportunities, and how we're doing there. Despite the fact that we are such a strong global brand, we have not been able to fully capitalize on the opportunities and to reap the benefits for the goods producing sector. And so we do have some work to do in that space. One of the major challenges that we see in the market remains that of misappropriation and exploitation of the nation's brand. And oftentimes we see this excessive copycatting of our design of our Jamaican products by players from other countries. And once you see this kind of copying, it means it creates competition for our very own Jamaican suppliers or exporters. And it also compromises the products and the authenticity that was defined for us earlier on in the presentation. But we have just seen too many of these products there on the shelves that says made in Jamaica, and carrying made in Jamaica labels, carrying even the flag which you need permission to use, as our Jaipur representative just mentioned. And also just having, if not doing that, carrying Jamaican style. I don't know how many of you have seen that on labels. And all of these we know are not affect how our Jamaican products are doing in the export market. There is no, as what I was saying earlier on, from our own experience in the market and our engagements with the buyers, the distributors, the retailers, the wholesalers, all of these players, they point to the opportunities that there is indeed a high demand for Jamaican-made products in these markets. They particularly, and you know, our major markets would be the US, Canada, UK. The issue that we have faced actually is being able to supply, to meet the kinds of demands for many of these products, and being able to do so competitively, because we do know that there are large market players that are also in this space. And so we need to be able to price competitively as well to really compete in that space. And it was interesting to hear the discussions around inputs and input prices and the whole matter of sustainability there, because it feeds right up into how well we're going to be doing on the export markets. That said, just what are these main products that we do have the opportunity to take advantage of in these export markets? And of course, let's start with fresh produce. Our yams do so well there that we even find yam. This is not something we manufacture now. Our yams, other countries, labeling their yams at Jamaica as Jamaican-made yams. I've personally seen that and gotten that feedback from sellers in the market. So we have the fresh produce area, sweet potatoes, yams, dasheen, mangoes. Mangoes, we have a strong demand taking place there. So these are our mangoes have a unique taste, just like any one of our fresh produce. I love to say it's our microclimate, our soil and all of that, but whatever it is, there is the demand for it. And when we get some of these demands coming to us from buyers, we're unable to meet them. So here are opportunities, even as we speak about exports and the export markets, there are investment opportunities that we're speaking to at the same time. Seafood is another big product category that is doing well, or conch or crustaceans generally do pretty well. Sea cucumber does well from from the Asian market. The sea cucumber is a big ask, and some of the demand we have not necessarily been able to fulfill. When you look at our processed goods, that's where we do have a lot of opportunities. We're exporting a number of our products fresh, but the opportunities up the value chain, we should not ignore those. And some of the products were mentioned, coffee, for example. We can talk about ackee, which we have demand for, that we're still fulfilled demand for still. Our alcoholic beverages is a big number on our export data. Snacks and condiments, spices, sauces, these are all important ones on our export demand sheets. On the non-food side, because it wouldn't be unfair to talk about how our Jamaican products are doing, Jamaican-made products are doing, and not mention the non-food. The cosmetics and personal care area are maybe the strongest new areas that you're seeing demand for. Not to mention our Jamaican black castor oil. We can't supply enough of that because the demand is consistently above our what we're able to produce. The extractive area, alumina, limestone are doing pretty well as well. And the fact is that these are coming out of Jamaica, and there is something that makes us unique in how these are represented there. Just to talk a little bit on our main markets, where we're seeing this high level of demand for the Jamaican made products. US is a big place. So when I say US, I don't think that that's a fair, that's fair. I need to get down a little bit more. And the tri-state area, it's usually where we have the largest diaspora presence that we're seeing this kind of demand for the Jamaican made products. Maybe it's nostalgia, just wanting, appreciating it as well for the quality that really exists in these. So in the tri-state area, which is our New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, that is a strong area, Southeast. And that if you look at that, that's nearly 500,000 population that we're talking about. So if we just focus on that, that's a big opportunity area for Jamaican made products. In the Southeast, which is the Florida, Atlanta area, there is also opportunity there. Northeast, we just participated in the pen relays and had delegations there. Our products that were there sold out in no time. So it says something about Jamaican made products, the sort of demand for it and the appreciation that we're seeing for it. And then, of course, in the Southwest Texas, then we can't leave out the UK and Canada. Birmingham, London are strong demand areas for our Jamaican made products. And in Canada, Ontario is the largest area, concentrated area. British Columbia, we're seeing that as a growing market opportunity, Alberta and Quebec as well. Having said that, though, it's very important for us to understand as we get into these markets and try to get the products out there, that we need to work with the channel, the people who serve in that channel. So it's key that we work, for example, with the buyers and distributors in that space, because there are different retail outlets. For example, you have the major chains there, you have the independents, you have the convenience stores, you have the mom and pop stores. Where is it that you want your product can best fit? So you might have your nice Jamaican products, which is in demand there, but you have to be able to work with these players as you go into this export market. You can go in with your own brand, and there is also opportunity to do Jamaican made products for producers from other areas as well. So you can use white labeling or co-packing, as we call it, to get our products out there, more of our products out there. They still carry the Jamaican made label because we made it and we're putting it out there. Some of these brands too, when you do the co-packing market, especially where, for example, a supermarket decides to do a white label with a Jamaican manufacturer here as well. Our space is limited in the market, and so we want to make sure that as they export, as we get the same issue again comes back of the use of brand Jamaica. The shelf space is limited, and so when we have other countries taking our shelf space, it's going to affect how much space we have for our genuine Jamaican products. So that's a key consideration as well. And just in wrapping up here, you know, I just want to say that as we look at Jamaican made products, we have to move away from just doing the same things. We can look at how we can diversify, because the buyers are asking for it, because the Jamaican made is already a name. How can you piggyback on that to get more and other types of products in that space? And as a matter of new products, new innovations, and looking beyond just the traditional products, and even looking beyond the traditional markets as well. Key in going forward is to make sure that you're paying attention to some of what was said earlier on, maintaining consistency of our products, meeting standards in those products, making sure that you trademark your products before you go into, you protect your products before you get into these markets. And the chair, the issue of pricing of our inputs and consistency really matters that affect how we do and how the brand is looked at in the market. Because if we can't get these inputs on a consistent basis, it changes the end product and it also affects the perception of the brand. So it's really important that as we encourage new players to go into the market, that these are key considerations as they go through the whole process. So finally, considerable opportunities are there. We need to deal with some of our supply side constraints, and country branding can go a very far way. Let us not minimize that potential impact in any way. Let us look at going up value chains, accessing, breaking in through to supply chains to get our products out there. And finally, assuring the authenticity of the products that we have out there. I know it is costly to police this whole thing, but it's very important that we do something in this area as a country. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Marlene. Lots of food for thought. I want to remind our listeners of the importance of all the things that Marlene just spoke about. One, it sounds like, and it has seemed this way for a while, that there's so much potential in our export markets for our locally branded and produced goods. But importantly, as Marlene said, it's not about affirmative action. Them love the brand Jamaica, and persons love to be associated with brand Jamaica. But you have to make sure that whatever you put on the shelf the very first time is of the highest quality, and the consistency and sustainability with which you operate your business to make sure that that defines your presence in the market. There is this moniker that we're tired of hearing about the country of samples. And that first of all, the fact that they accept the sample, first of all, and then want the sample just says that they need the brand. The brand is strong. So because it's not all samples, them are going even fenny pan, you know. But the issue though is to make sure that our operations, and you notice what we did here in our panel discussion, we started we ran the whole gamut of the supply chain. When we were going to the manufacturing part itself, the operations of the manufacturing entity itself, which perhaps we can do in another iteration, Sunset, to talk about the labor issues, efficiency issues, and operations issues, and things of that nature. But we spoke about raw material, and we spoke about the beginning of the supply chain, and we ended up at the end of the supply chain, where the export market and the actual client, the actual customer is concerned. Critical thing that Marlene also said was that as exporters, we have to develop a relationship with intermediaries. We have to develop the relationship with our distributors and our buyers. They are the ones who can consistently find the right tables or houses or households to get your product into. And that is a moot point these days, interestingly, because of the fact that you have the e-commerce. So e-commerce allows you to bypass a distributor in many instances, bypass the person who is that intermediary and go directly to the client. But I'm here to tell you that the same thing applies. You have to, all you need to do is supply one bad product to the final user, and that's it. You're on a downhill slope after that, where your e-commerce life is concerned, especially if you're on platforms like Amazon or eBay or such. So it's important, lessons learned so far, I mean, lessons not learned, but perhaps reiterated. is the importance of understanding your entire supply chain, understanding that inside out. Develop your relationships with your supply chain participants to make sure that that is locked solid. It's very important for us to understand the branding that you're going to utilize with your products. So as without a brand, your product can be the best thing in the world, but without the promotion, the development and promotion of your brand, nobody will know about how fabulous your product is. It's also important to protect that brand, to understand that you need to register, whether it is whatever intellectual property you have, trademark, copyright, patent, industrial design, or whatever. Protect it first of all, register it, so that you can have it registered, so that you can protect it. And importantly, leverage it when you're getting into the markets. And of course, as Marlene said, at the end of the value chain that deals with the customer, you have to understand one, diversification in the marketplace. You have to understand that relationships with your intermediaries is very, very important for us to have. So, chock full of information this afternoon. It's your time now. It's your time to ask your questions, anything that comes to mind. All our panelists are still online. Are there questions? Are there questions in the chat, Sansi, that you want to? Oh, Jenny, you have a question. Jenny, you're not supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to answer questions.
I was just thinking, as Richard presented, that we started a discussion with looking at the demand in the tourism industry for our manufactured goods, but I'm wondering, how can we get a better sense of demand for raw material from the manufacturing sector? You know, how can we put together information that we can identify key opportunities to inform the agricultural sector, for example, or what other business opportunities may exist in that demand? You know, it's important for us to understand that, and I think that would be something that we would, as JBDC, love to hear.
Yeah, what we're really talking about is product development. And I think that there's two things that is largely missing in Jamaican business. Some people do it and some people don't. The first is customer feedback. Lots of businesses don't ask customers, what do you think about my products? They don't do mystery shops. They don't give customers a feedback form, or they don't make the effort to find out what people feel about their products and how it could change, how it could be improved. The other is market research, which is like customer feedback, but doing research with professional companies that do focus groups, will assess your competition so that you have clear data on where you sit in the market and what opportunities or risks there are for a product that you're trying to develop. So yeah, those are the things that come to mind when I think about the opportunities and how we could derive of them.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. We have a question.
Steve McDonald.
From who?
Steve McDonald.
From Steve McDonald. Steve, we're going to unmute you and you ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for taking this question. I'm a member of the MSME Alliance. Couple of questions, and one is similar to what the IPO lady just asked. Just picking back on that, we heard earlier on, and we've heard in the press how many new hotel rooms are going to be built. And with that, I would expect that we would have new tourist arrival. Just wanted to find out from the JBDC if you guys are tying this back into the the vendors who are participating in the tourist industry, like craft vendors and so forth, just to say, okay, we're getting 10,000 or 30,000, whatever that number is of new visitors. So from that perspective, we can expect to have 30,000 new buyers. So we would need some additional items to go on the shelves. And so, and even with the hotels, new hotels being built, then there's new space. What is the program do you guys have, if any, to work with like the MSME Alliance and small businesses to say, okay, this is what we have going, and tying it back, come right back to training and so forth. How can you scale up your operation to ensure that they're able to plan in terms of what's happening and move that on from that perspective? One of the other questions that I had, if I may, was with regards to the craft items in the souvenir items in the gift shops. Now, a lot of these items are made in China. And I know it was mentioned before, redesign and so forth, but the items are fairly, they really have nothing to design there. So you can definitely see that someone sent it to China to get it done. What is being done from the government perspective to ensure that we have more Jamaican items in these gift shops? Because we know that floor space, shelf space is limited. And just moving on from shelf space to Miss Porter. So I'm in the Toronto market also, and one of the challenges that we've had in this era, I would say for the past 7 years, is limited supply from Jamaica. And you pretty much touch on everything. And yes, you're correct. We have Jamaican pumpkin from Costa Rica. But part of the reason why we have that happening is that there isn't enough Jamaican pumpkins coming in. And so the market has to be supplied. And people are going out. And I know of one person who actually told me he planted about 10 acres of pumpkin down in Florida. And there were Jamaican seeds down in Florida and brought them up. Did a similar thing with Jamaican peppers because they just don't get enough. Now, every year I witness a shortage of Jamaican sweet potatoes. So we know of the problem. We've known of these problems for certainly the past 7 years since I was directly involved. However, I haven't seen anything being done from a structural, whether it's government perspective, to ensure that there is more supplies. It is good to say, yes, that this is happening, but there is nothing that is being done to facilitate greater supply on the market from that perspective. So if you could say in terms of what is being done to facilitate greater supply where that is concerned. And just to highlight one quick example while I wrap up. When Red Stripe, we have Bami, which is sold in the Toronto market from Jamaica. When Red Stripe started to use cassava, I noticed a shortage in the marketplace of the Bami. I didn't make the connection at the time. I reached out to my sources and friends. And what I realized was, what came back was that Red Stripe have pretty much take the suppliers, and they were using the suppliers, the farmers, for their product, which is what I think is one of the essential problem that we're having, is that we don't look and say, okay, the market is going to increase by 30%. So we need an additional people to supply the marketplace, which ties back into my first questions in terms of we're having new hotels coming on, but we're not doing anything to increase the number of suppliers. So I think we need to go back to foundation and get that right in terms of supplies and how much we need in quantity. And we haven't, as Ms. Porter rightly mentioned, we haven't yet crossed over. We're just supplying the diaspora. we have not yet crossed over into additional markets. There's still a large untapped African market. So we haven't yet crossed over into those additional markets. So we have a lot of on supply. We have a lot of possibilities that we have not tapped into, but I'm not sure that we're doing the right assessment. Somebody, I think Mr. Cole spoke about market research, but not only market research from the farmers' perspective or suppliers. We need a much more comprehensive research to be done. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for putting this on.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Steve. Are you in Jamaica or are you in Canada as we speak? You're muted. Steve?
Oh, yes, sorry, I was muted. I am currently in Toronto as we speak.
Okay, all right. So you asked a bunch of questions, three in the main. You asked whether or not we do any kind of forecasting when you have expected demand of certain items. Yes, that forecasting is in fact done. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you heard Carolyn's presentation, but they did a major tourism demand study, and they're updating it as we speak to put a number on that. But it's not only about encouraging persons to go into the business. It goes deeper than that. It's about making sure that the right products are available, because you spoke about gift shops. And the second question you asked was whether or not what about the shelf space in the gift shops? If we're doing anything about influencing the contents on the shelf space in the gift shop. Remember, most of those gift shops, first of all, are privately owned. So they kind of end up determining what goes on the shelf. No, the other part of that story is that the variety of craft items or gift items is something that JBDC is particularly invested in, to make sure that there's constant training, constant sensitization to new business opportunities that persons can venture into. Appropriate business opportunities, appropriate products, not just the same old recycled type of product that you see. And that is why you have a lot. So we're heavily invested where that is concerned. So some work is being done. And also, I know our ministry colleagues are also online, and they are, with our partnership, are leading the implementation of our gift and craft policy, which speaks specifically about upskilling our craft persons in new techniques and techniques that perhaps have gone under the carpet, unfortunately, techniques that define Jamaica, products and services that define Jamaica with our masters and so on. But also, the crafts policy speaks about the market access and providing market channels for our products. At crafts policy speaks specifically about making sure that there is a market channel open at every single port of call in the country. So yes, some work is going on. Maybe, we're not saying that more work couldn't happen, but certainly, but some work is going on as it relates to the supply shortage in export markets. Marlene began to speak about that. That is also as a result of the quantity of quality export ready products that are available for export. That's very important. That's one of the reasons why you're putting on a forum such as this one, to have persons understand that there are opportunities in the manufacturing sector. There are export opportunities that need to be fulfilled. So I appreciate your question. I appreciate the interest that you have taken in the particular subject. Perhaps, Steve, looking forward to come back to Jamaica and set up some of those businesses to produce some of these things, or invest in some businesses here that can help to drive some of that fill some of that demand. So I appreciate the question. Is there anyone else on the panel that want to chime in on that? Or Tracy, you're going to go to Tracy?
No, go ahead.
Is there anyone else on the panel? Richard,
Yes.
or
Let me take it,
Marlene?
Yes. Deputy Chair, let me go on it. I think you have said a lot around it, very little left to be said on it. I just want to underscore though, that the government, the Ministry of Agriculture has a program. They have the priority crops that they're focused on right now. And so they're making lands available for some of these priority crops. And that's something that is underway. We see, for example, where they have established specific parks for mangoes, for ackee, and promoting things like avocado, which we have. I know I have on the table right now a demand for avocado that we can't meet. So there are plans afoot, groups that they're making lands available, looking at the packaging of the investment opportunities around these. There's a whole project going on around ginger and turmeric, as you're aware too, Harold. All of these are opportunities that we need investments for. So even persons on here can help to take this kind of message out there to say, why not Jamaica? Because if the market exists, it is the supply we're looking for. And so we'd want to see that happening. And the final comment on this is that some of the production taking place, Stephen, is not just looking now at just going into the export market, but we were importing a lot of things that we eat here. But you realize, take for example, what has happened with Irish potato. We're now at the stage where we're almost filling our local demand for Irish potato. So it means that we'll be seeing a little dip there on the import side for Irish potatoes. So all of this is happening simultaneously for the domestic market to meet the tourist demand that is coming out of the studies Carolyn spoke to earlier on. And so somewhere along the line, I'm seeing it as a process for this whole thing to begin for us to begin to see the results. But key to affecting supply is getting investors to come inside of this space. We're about to work on a project that evaluates what the true supply side looks like. And that, of course, will give us more ammunition to go as we go out and look for investors in the space. A lot to be done, and we can't deny that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marlene. We're going to go to who? Tracy?
Mullins.
Tracy Mullins. Yeah. Somebody had a bunch of questions for
Richard.
For Richard. That's Tracy?
No, that's Kellery.
That's Kellery Mills. Tracy,
in the meantime, Mr. Cole, you can just take a look at the questions from Kellery Mills chat, and then we will go through them after Tracy asks her question.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Hi, a pleasant evening.
Afternoon.
I'm so happy that I got the privilege to come on the meeting because there's a lot of information that I wanted question on. I am a beautician, and so I am new to the forum. I am new. I do my castor oil and coconut oil. But as Mr. McDonald stated, I am a foundation of the industry in that I grew up wearing these craft items because my father had a shop at craft market. And so I didn't pay much interest in it. And so it's when I decided, well, I had to change profession because I had a son that was born with disability. And so I had to be at home. And so it's there my interest grew because I would make my hair treatments for my client, and my success rate has been 100%. Everyone that had alopecia, acne problem, my main ingredients that I use is from my grandmother garden. And so like the sorrel, the hibiscus, both the hibiscus plant and the sorrel is one of the key main important and the neem ingredient that I use in my ingredients for my treatments, and it works. So it's when COVID stepped in now, I got the chance of staying home with my children online, and that's when I started experimenting. And I realized my client encouraging me. So one of my clients went ahead and got me the graphics designer, and I'm here. She told me to get my design trademark. She went ahead and assisted me in getting my business registered. Just recently got my business registered in January. And so some of the questions that I want to ask, the lady from Jampo was here, because this is one of the entities that she said I need to get involved in, Jampro. She told me about JBDC, and that's when I reached out and sent an email. And so I'm doing some training. That is one of the reasons why I'm on this platform now. And so I want to know, how can I get registered with Jampro? And also, how can I be a part of the SME? Because I hear about the SME Alliance as well, because I'm just recently now in the process of getting a property, because I want to provide my own product. Like the coconut, I have to rely on farmers, and sometimes I can't get it because of location, which you guys have discussed in the meeting. Transportation is one of the major problems for me, and the produce with the farmers, the local farmers, sometimes they hold back the produce because they want it for their purpose, and I can't get the coconut. And a lot of persons asking me for the coconut now, and I'm unable to get them. And then the cost and the transportation cost. So I am in the process of getting a land to grow my own coconut and neems. So any assistance that I can get or information that will help me, I will appreciate it.
Christian, you don't bother feel alone, because many other startup entrepreneurs have some of the same challenges like that you have outlined. Yeah. So Marlene is on the line. You said you wanted to get in touch with Jampro. I'm sure she can share. There's a portal now, so Marlene, that you can log on or something like that. And
yes, but there's a little bit more I'd want to share with Tracy as well. So I'm suggesting that she puts her, as a new person coming in the space, that she puts her email address in here, and I'll have the department, that relevant department, send her the information with all the websites that she can go to get the information she's looking for.
Absolutely. And to become a JBDC client, similar kind of process. There is an online portal that you can go on to. Just go on our website and go down, scroll down to a button that says be a client. And then you click on that and you start the process, and someone will get in touch back with you in short order. But thank you so much, Tracy, and for that comment and that contribution to our forum.
All right, the question for Mr. Cole from Kellery Miles. It's a series of questions in light of ongoing supply chain challenges, which you have said are not necessarily now at crisis levels. What is the current situation for supply chain issues by manufacturers? Are they readily able to source all or most materials amid ongoing challenges? Where are manufacturers now sourcing most of their raw material? And are we still heavily dependent on the West, or has there been a greater tapping into of nearshore opportunities?
Richard?
Oh, yeah, okay. So the first question, I would not say that the problem has left us completely, but it is not near as critical as it used to be. During the pandemic, we had major issues with sourcing raw materials. One such example was the high demand of sanitization products. As COVID hit, my company was developing a hand sanitizer, and within 2 weeks we had it approved. But we could not make enough because the world supply of ethanol and isopropyl alcohol was like gold. But luckily, government officials came together and spoke to local manufacturers and suppliers of ethanol, and we were able to purchase through the liquor companies such as Ray and Nephew and others, and that allowed us to continue to maintain reasonable production levels. So while we don't have those types of issues, there continues to be some disruptions with suppliers. And as I said in my presentation, your goal should be to look to find alternate suppliers and alternate regions to have your products or your raw materials supplied from. The question about where manufacturers are sourcing raw materials, that is largely dependent on the type of products that you manufacture. We purchase products from all over the world, mostly the US and China. But what we have seen recently is a realization from the West that there needs to be greater self-reliance on the sourcing of raw materials as opposed to being dependent on China. Because there were periods when China was completely locked down and it was near impossible to source certain raw materials. So the US has started to relook at the manufacturing and supply of raw materials and are becoming much more self-dependent. It's not as easy for us to do in the Caribbean. We are not huge suppliers of raw materials. Perhaps that's the case for, in some instances in agriculture, we certainly can do a lot better, but there are many other raw materials that have to be imported. We have changed our focus, as I've said, from as far away as China and are looking closer to the West for some of our raw materials. The third is about, yeah, I mean, I guess the way I've just explained it is that we continue to be largely dependent on the West. Yes, we can do more locally within the Caribbean, but I think there needs to be, the Caribbean islands need to come together and have a discussion about what the total need is and how we can put together supply operations within the Caribbean as opposed to the US, so that there is work that can be done. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much, Richard. I think that was a substantive response. I hope that answers your question. What was it again? Hillary. I hope so. But either way, what I'm thinking, really and truly, what I think is that we need to have a part 2 of this conversation because there are certain things that we don't touch it in terms of this whole the value chain around manufacturing, you know.
Absolutely. If I could just say, you're absolutely right. I mean, the things that manufacturers think about most is your price. How is your product competitive? And the large inputs are labor, energy, raw materials. And that's what we need to be focusing on. It's almost impossible. It's very, very difficult to come up with unique products, and anybody can replicate your product in any other country. So what do we have to do to maintain our competitiveness is to have better pricing. It always boils down to price. So I think there is a big discussion about how we can reduce our input costs.
How do we define competitive advantage to begin with, you know, as our Jamaican manufacturing sector? How do we define that? As I say, you know, it relates to our inputs and not only the availability and the cost of our labor, for instance, but the quality.
Right.
That is also
another discussion about productivity.
That's also another conversation completely. Pricing is important, but how do we, I mean, yes, but how do we establish what is a competitive pricing? What is considered competitive pricing if you're going for a high-end market, for instance, our Jamaican? So how do we talk about niche marketing, for instance? Is a whole other conversation that I believe we need to be having as well. How do you differentiate? Don't get me wrong, all of the issues that we spoke about this afternoon are critical, but there's so much more that we need to be discussing, and Sansia and team challenging the corporate communications team to have a part 2 of this conversation, because there's so much more that we can be discussing around the whole business of manufacturing. What are some of the policy decisions? What are some of the policy supportive mechanisms that we already have? That I know the team from the ministry is online with us this afternoon, and for them to share that and the context of how that contributes to helping you to be able to be more competitive in the space are things that we definitely would like to touch on as well going forward. But for now, we're going to have to pull up stumps for the afternoon. We have gone over time. We were supposed to have finished at 3 p.m. and we're gone over time now. As is, I think I've eked out 11 minutes of your time beyond what we had originally negotiated at 3 p.m. So I want to thank our presenters, our panelists, sincerely for being a part of us this afternoon, starting with Mrs. McDonald Riley Carolyn from Tourism Linkages Network, and Richard Coe, Vice President JMEA, and also you are the CEO at Fleetwood, no, so Richard?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for being with us. Janine Taylor, our Manager for Marketing Services Unit here at JBDC, Adrien Thompson from JIPO, and Marlene Porter from JAMPRO. Thank you all really for just such a rich conversation and leaving us wanting even more.
If I could just, before we end, Mrs. Vieira did say that she is a woman of action. And we should have and should be working on some action items.
Yes.
Until we perhaps meet next. So I don't know if we have time to do it now, but I think it would be important for us to say, well, what happens next? What are the action items from this?
What I think, I don't think we can do it now, because we've already gone over what we have negotiated, the time that we have negotiated with folks this afternoon. But certainly in doing the summary of the event, Sansia and her team, we're going to come up with a list of specific action items and share with all the participants and certainly the panelists as well. And that will lead us into a part 2 of our conversation. Steve, I see a comment about raising the duty on souvenirs, but I hear you, and I fully feel what you mean by that. But you know, we can't be erecting trade barriers. The WTO will have something to say about that for sure. But you know, other persons have done it cleverly, but we can consider that. So let me conclude by thanking all of you who have stayed with us this afternoon, have shared with us this afternoon, all of you entrepreneurs who have taken time out of your busy Monday schedule to be with us for these 2 hours this afternoon. Thank you to our technical team, David, and I saw Britannia earlier. Thanks to the corporate communications team who organized this product or JBDC Business Dialogue Forum. My name is Harold Davis, and it has certainly been my pleasure to share with you and be with you this afternoon and be your moderator. Thank you so much and have yourselves a good afternoon.
And you. Thank you.